Okay, so you all in class 9th, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, so first I'll start with hello. So first I'll start with telling you that what are the topics which are there in class 9th, right? And then we'll see, right, what the approach will look like. So first thing, the topics which you have in class 9th are these. First topic which you have is actually motion, right? So the first topic you have is motion, right? Second thing which you'll have is Newton's laws of motion. Then you'll have work power energy. Then the next thing which you'll have will be gravitation. After that you have fluids. After fluids you must maybe having heat and thermodynamics. And the last chapter which you'll have will be sound. Now why the structure is like this? See, first chapter which you have is motion, so you'll study about movement. Second chapter which is Newton's laws of motion, it tells you a glimpse of it gives you a glimpse of basically how the motion will look like under different scenarios, right? So first you'll study what is movement, then why the movement is happening in a certain way. Work power energy, like Newton's laws of motion, is just a way of analyzing motion. So there are two methods to solve the same kind of problem. Newton's laws of motion is one and work power energy is the other. Once you will understand this, the most important force which we have in our surrounding is gravitation. Then using gravitation, you will try to define how fluids impact or how fluids behave under gravity. Then the next thing which you will have is different from this part. So up to this part, it is mechanics. Right, up to this part, it's mechanics. After that, you will study what is the effect of heat. Right. And the last thing which you have is a kind of wave, which is sound. So that's in a nutshell, that's the syllabus you have in class 9th. Now I'll start a little bit, I'll start with motion, right? Let's examine what motion is. Right? So let's start with motion. What is motion? Can somebody tell me what is motion? Anyone? What is motion? What's the first thing that comes in your mind when you're trying to define motion? Anyone? Displacement. Cool.
Travel.
I want to go to basic, right? Basically, when you study that, when you start motion, can be a bit technical. Movement. When I'll talk to you about movement, what's the first thing that comes in your mind? Displacement is one, agree. Anything else?
Acceleration.
Acceleration, that's an implication of this. Motion, basically, isn't it like change in position? In the most basic sense, isn't it change in position? In its basic sense, what is motion? Motion means you were here at some point of time and you moved and now you're here. If you will not move from your location, you cannot say that you are in motion, right? For motion, what you need, you have a certain position one, and that position needs to change. If the position is not changing, you cannot say you are in motion, right? So that's the most elementary thing, is there should be a change in position. If there is no change in position, you cannot say the body is in motion, right? Now, what is position? Can somebody tell me what is position? If I'll ask you to define position, what is it? What do you think is position?
The location of the object.
Location of the object, right? Location of the object. How will you define location of the object? See, one thing is you'll put your fingers, you'll say the object is over there, right? That's one saying, right? But if you'll have to explain it on paper, how will you explain it? What do you think? If you want to define position, let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say there is your bag, right? You went out from the school and you left your lunch box or something, correct? In your classroom. Now you have to explain your friend where the lunch box is. Suppose the friend is from some other school, right? He has to go over there at a certain location. He has to pick up the lunch box and come back to you. So how will you explain where the lunch box is?
With the surrounding things.
Correct. With the surrounding things, or you can say that go straight, take left, take right, right? Something like this. So you will take a reference, isn't it? So the first thing you will take in order to define position is a reference point. Whenever you define location, you define it with respect to something. You will say once you'll enter the class, see the third seat over there and you'll find my lunchbox, right? That reaching that classroom is important, right? So if you'll enter from one gate, location will be something. If you enter from another gate, location will be something else. So it depends what your reference is, from where you want to see that object. So position, as far as position is concerned, it's a relative thing. It depends on what your reference is. For example, I'll take up another example. Let's say there's a teacher here and there's students, right? If I'll ask the teacher, what's the location of student 1? Then teacher will say at a certain angle at a distance of 2 meters, right? The student is sitting, correct? But if I'll ask this student, where student 1 is sitting, then the student will say with respect to me, it's 1 meter and straight. I'm talking about the same person, right? 1. But with respect to teacher, position is something. And with respect to the other student, position is something else, correct? Planetary motion. You can take example of planetary motion also. Let's say the sun and earth is revolving around it. And let's say there's some other planet. You can take any planet you want, right? Now, with respect to earth, position of sun is something, right? At a certain distance, D1. With respect to the other planet, it's at D2. So it depends from where you are seeing sun. If you are seeing it from earth, you'll get some distance or some position of sun. If you'll see it from a different planet, you'll see some other position of sun, right? Got it or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what it basically means, first thing you need to remember is that position depends on reference, or if you want to say it in other terms, you can say position is a relative term. Before defining position, you'll have to define with respect to what, right? So the bigger question here is, whenever you are defining position, you'll have to define one thing, and that is with respect to what. Until you define this parameter with respect to what, you cannot define position of an object, at least mathematically. Got this thing or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So can I proceed further? If you have copied this, fine, then I can proceed further. Do let me know. Once you have copied this, do let me know.
Sure, done.
Done? Okay. So what I just told you is this, that whenever we talk about position, we need an observer, right? Or from where you are observing it. The moment you change your observer, position of the object will change. Right? That is what precisely we said. So without observer, you cannot define position, and whenever a position is being defined, it is with respect to a particular observer. If you change the observer, position will change. And the statement we wrote for this is that it's a relative term. Now, how we define it, right? Mathematically, so this is just philosophical, right? It's just theory. Now, if I want to define it mathematically, then we use something which we call coordinate system. Has anybody, do you have any idea about what coordinate system is? If you have heard it somewhere.
Like the XY axis?
Yeah,
Graph.
very good. Yeah, correct. So I'll tell you a few technical things in this, right, that you need to keep in mind. I'll tell you the utility for that also. What we do is, let's say I have fixed my observer, right? It's at some corner of the room or anywhere, right, on earth or anything. Once I have fixed my observer, I'll keep my observer, let's say, at this point. So here, this is the point where my observer is. And let's say this is the point where my object is, right? So I have defined location of my observer and the location of my object. Now, if I'll have to define the location of this object with respect to observer, then this is a tool to do that, right? Coordinate system is a tool to specify location of our object with respect to an observer. How do we do that? We'll take three axes. The horizontal line represents x-axis. Vertical line represents y-axis. And line which will be perpendicular to these two. So x and y are in the plane of the screen. And this z-axis is perpendicular to the plane of the screen. Now, if I want to define location of the object considering these axes, then I will say, let's say the object is in xy plane only. It's not at a certain height. It's only on a plane. Let's say you made a dot on a blackboard, right? So it's like that. Then what I'll say, that if a person goes some distance like this, stops here, takes a turn and goes like that, the person will reach here. Or the person can go like this first, take a turn and go like this, and it will reach here. Correct? So what we understood from this, if the person wants to reach the location of the object, then the person has to travel some distance in x direction and some distance in y direction, right? Some distance in x direction and some distance in y direction. So we write it like this. How much distance person has to travel in x direction? You'll write it here, comma, how much distance the person has to travel in y direction? You write it here, right? And this is what you call coordinates of the object. This is what you call coordinates of the object, right? Now, whenever we'll have to define position of object with respect to observer, we always define it in terms of coordinates. And what are coordinates? What is the distance in x direction and what is the distance in y direction? If I'll give you these two parameters, right? If I'll give you these two parameters, if you have this understanding, you can readily tell me that where the object is. For example, if let's say I'll tell you that coordinate of a point is 1, 2. Tell me where the object is with respect to observer. And you'll simply say that I will go 1 meter in x direction, then I'll go 2 meters in y direction, and I'll say, here is your object. Got it or not?
Yes,
If I'll say
Yes,
that
sir.
coordinates of object are, let's say 3, 4, then what you'll say, I'll go 3 meter in x direction, 4 meters in y direction, and this is the location of the object. So this is how we use it, right? Just by giving coordinates, you'll be able to locate where the object is with respect to the observer. Got it or not? Now question. If I'm saying object and observer are at the same location, what I'm saying, object and observer are at the same location. Can you tell me what are the coordinates of object? I'm saying object and observer are at the same location. Can you tell me what are the coordinates of the object?
0, 0,
0.
0.
0, 0. 0, comma
0.
0. So that's why our coordinates of observer will always be what? 0, 0. Got it or not? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So this is how you represent position of an object in a two-dimensional space. Now, if you have three-dimensional space, which we have generally, right, there'll be some, let's say, consider a point in a room. So room is a three-dimensional space, right? It has length, breadth, and height. Correct. So then I'll have to give how many coordinates for 3D?
3 coordinates.
3 coordinates.
X, comma Y, comma Z. So if I'll give you these 3 coordinates, you can tell me where the object is. You'll go first X, Y, and then up or down, right? Depends what the Z coordinate is. If you have understood and copied this, I can proceed further now. Done? Any questions? Okay, great. So what we generally do, a coordinate system for so that you can remember, is that we choose it like this. So this is X, this is Y, and this is Z. Here is your origin, which has coordinate 0, 0. Now see, this is a convention, right? You can have other methods also, but that's a convention which you need to follow. So anything to the right of 0, right? I'm talking about x-axis for now. Anything to the right of 0 will be plus. So if I'm saying this axis, what this line will represent, this will represent plus values. What this line will represent, minus values. For example, if I'm saying x coordinate is 1 meters, so you'll draw it here. And you will say this is 1 meter. Simple. If I'll say x is minus 1 meter, then you will draw it here, right? And I'll call it minus 1 meter. Understood this thing? So anything to the right is plus and to the left is minus. Now come to y-axis. Anything in upward direction, right? This direction will be plus, and here it will be minus. Why we have these kind of system? Because generally number line, you're used to number line, right? So right of 0 you have positive numbers, left of 0 you have negative numbers. So this idea actually has came from there, right? So plus values in upward direction and minus values in downward direction. For example, if I'll say that y is equal to 1 meter, what it means? This direction. Plus. If I'll say y is equal to minus 1 meter, that means downward direction, right? Now let's do a few exercises, right, before proceeding further for that. If I'll have to draw coordinates first, 2, 3. Second is 2, minus 3. Third is minus 3, minus 2. So let's say we want to draw 2. So if you have a situation like this, let's go one by one. So this is how I'll draw it. X is 2, y is 3. So that means x is 2, it's positive, so this direction. Y is 3, positive, so that means upwards. So this is the location of object. This is 2 and this is 3. Second one. This is 0. 2 is positive, so x is positive. So I'll draw it like this, 2. Now see, y is negative. So that means I'll have to draw it downwards. So this is minus 3. Third one, you have -3. That means x is negative now. So I'll draw it here. So this is -3. And -2. Again, y is also negative. So that means down. So this is -2. So this will be the location of the object. Got it or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this was about coordinate system, right? So somewhere if you'll see these kind of things, you should not get confused, right? Okay. So we define what position is, right? If you want to mathematically represent it, we represent it in form of coordinates. What are coordinates? Coordinates are value of x, y, and z, right? They basically tell you what are the respective distance in x, y, and z directions are. And that will help you to locate the object with respect to the observer, which is sitting at origin. Then I told you sign convention, right positive, left negative, upward positive, downward negative, right? Z you don't need to know right now, but I'll tell you that it's the same, upward positive and downward negative. Okay. If position is a relative term, can you tell me change in position, will it be a relative term or not? If position is a relative term, change in position, will it be a relative term or not? Will it be relative?
It will.
It will, of course, right? Because if position is a relative term, it depends on observer. The same thing will happen with change in position also, right? For example, I'll take one example here. So let's say, as a famous example, you'll find it everywhere, right? So the main thing is there is a car, right? So there's a car, and this car, there's a driver, and there's a passenger, let's say, right? It's a cab. So, and there is a person, so there's a passenger, there's a driver, and there is a person, right? I'm calling it A, who is standing on ground, right? So the person is standing on ground. Now just see the observations, right? If I'll ask P, the passenger, that whether the driver is moving or not, what will be the answer? Yes or no? With respect to passenger, is the driver moving? What will be the answer? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No. Answer will be no. Correct. On the other hand, if I'll ask A, right? If I'll ask A that whether the driver is moving or not, what will be the answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. With the car, it's moving, right? The answer is yes. So with the car, the driver is moving. You're talking about the same person, the driver, right? It's not like you're talking about two different persons. You're talking about the same person, that is driver. But what happened here is that the moment you changed your observer, initial observer was the passenger, and now your observer is someone who is standing on ground. The moment you changed your observer, the motion parameter got changed. When the observer was P, there was no motion. And when the observer became A, there is motion. So we can conclude using this that motion, or in other words, you can say movement or change in position, is a relative term, like position. This is a very important concept. Right, that motion is a relative term. Any question on this? Any question on this? Yes, no?
Sir.
No.
Yeah.
No, sir.
So sometimes you can have a question like, is motion an absolute term? So the answer will be no. Is motion an absolute term? The answer is no. Motion is a relative term. Relative to what? Relative to the observer you're talking about. Got it or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you have any questions, you can ask. No questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Now we studied that, okay, motion position is there. When position changes, there is motion. Now the thing is that if there is motion, right? If there is motion, hello, there's so much echo, beta. Just a minute. Yeah. If there is motion, then position will change, and both the things are relative, right? That is what we studied till now. Relative to what? Relative to the observer you're talking about. Correct? Now, defining observer, sometimes in some books you'll find it in another way also. I'll tell you that way. That sometimes they define it in terms of frame of reference. Frame of reference. What it means is this. A region or zone from where or with respect to what? With respect to what? We define motion, right? So frame of reference is a region or zone from where we define motion parameters, or in other terms, you can say where your observer is. For example, let's say you are seeing a car. Let's say you are seeing a car which is moving on road and you are standing on ground. So who is the observer? You are the observer. What you are seeing, the car. Who is the observer? You are the observer. What you are seeing is the car. So the region or zone from where you are seeing. So from where you are seeing? Ground. From where you are seeing car? Ground. So your reference frame will be ground, or frame of reference means the same thing. So your frame of reference is ground. Similarly, if let's say you are going in a train or a plane or whatsoever, right? You are seeing your surrounding. So you are seeing the surrounding from where? You are seeing the surrounding from where? Your train, right? Or plane, whatsoever. So you can say that train will be your frame of reference. If let's say you are going in a car and seeing the surrounding. So who is the observer? You. Where are you? Inside the car. Then your frame of reference will become the car. Right? Correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So your frame of reference, which you are saying, let's say FOR, can be of two types. One, it can be static or stationary. And second, it can be moving. So static, we assume ground to be static. Actually, ground is not static. Earth is moving, but we assume ground to be static. So in static example, we'll take ground. And that's an assumption. I'll tell you why this is an assumption, but for now, just remember that ground we consider as static. Now, if you'll consider moving, in moving, they can move in two types, right? Your train or car can move in two types. One is, it can move with changing speed, right? Like 30, 40, 50, 60, right? So your frame of reference which is moving is changing its speed continuously. And second type, it can have constant speed. Understood this thing or not? Your frame of reference can be stationary or can be moving. If it's moving, it can move in two ways. either while moving it will change its speed or it will not change speed. There are only two possibilities, right? Correct? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Now, the last thing which I want to tell you on frame of reference is this, that we have kept static plus constant speed into one category. We'll get the reason later. But static plus a frame of reference which is moving with constant speed. That means this one and this one. We have kept it in one category. Changing speed, we have kept it in another category. Right? So this one we kept in one category and this one is kept in another category. Now, just for information, you don't have to dwell deep into it at this point, but just for information, the first case which we have assumed here, that is whether the frame of reference is static or moving with constant velocity, we have a name for it, and that is inertial. That is inertial frame of reference, right? And when this frame moves with variable speed, we call it non-inertial frame of reference. Just for the sake of information, right? This I don't expect you to remember at this stage. But what I expect you to remember is that the definition, a region or zone from where you're observing motion parameters. Now, from where you are measuring motion parameters can be at rest or it can be in motion. If it's in motion, it can have changing velocity or it can have variable velocity. Any question on this? Any question on this?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No,
Okay.
sir.
So what I told you now is this, that
Oh, so you have to tell us why that was the assumption that ground is static.
ground is static. Why it's an assumption? Is that what you're asking?
So you said you tell us.
Okay, I will. Okay, I'll tell you now. See, what happens is that what you call static, first thing, what you call static. For example, see, let's say there are two students, S1 and there is S2, right? There are two students sitting in a class. Teacher is teaching, these two are sitting. So they'll say that S2 is stationary with respect to S1, right? S1 will say that S2 is stationary with respect to me. And since I am on ground, right? Since S1 is on ground, you can also say that S2 is stationary with respect to ground also, right? Because S1 is on ground. So up to this point, it's correct. Now the question is, now just try to analyze. The question is that whether ground is stationary or not. Because if ground is stationary, then S1 is stationary and then S2 is also stationary, right? But let's check whether ground is stationary or not. Take two planets, right? So here you have Earth and here you have...
It's in reference to us, sir. In reference to us, ground is stationary.
That's correct. With respect to you, the ground is stationary. But as a whole, you cannot say the ground is stationary. Again, the same question.
So,
see, frame of reference actually is defined. It just says region, right? The region or zone from where you are observing motion parameters, correct?
okay,
Now,
so
yeah.
So basically, instead we can say that ground is stationary in respect to us, but relative to the universe, it is not stationary.
Correct. That you can say. So in
Got it.
totality, what you can say is that ground is not stationary, right? Absolute stationary or absolute motion is not there, right? Nothing is absolutely stationary,
So,
right? So nothing like a static frame of reference exists. Because see, frame of reference is what? You are defining observer. You are defining observer. You are not defining object. Understand this point. Frame of reference, you are defining observer, and no observer is stationary. Getting my point or not? You are saying that ground is stationary with respect to you. Then you will have to locate a point on ground first thing. That point is stationary with respect to you, correct? But frame of reference says that where your observer is that absolutely stationary or not? That's the question, right? So nothing is at absolute rest. Nothing is at absolute rest, right? So observer cannot be on something which is at absolute rest, because there is no concept of absolute rest or motion. Got it or not?
Yes, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that's why ground is not stationary, because if you take other planets into account, it will also be in motion. Okay, what you studied in class 8th? I just want to get a brief background that how much you have studied in class 8th. Which chapters were there? What was the first chapter and so on? How many of you are from CBSE board? Have you studied trigonometry? Anyone?
I have, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Trigonometry, I don't expect either. So what should I tell you now? Position, about position, I told you. Okay, let's discuss a few things, right? I'll ask you a few general questions. Correct, and you'll have to answer me, correct? Because the content which I wanted to give you, I gave you already, right? Since you understood, so that's it. What I wanted to teach you today. But I'll ask you a few general questions, and you'll have to tell me your opinion about it, right? Can somebody tell me what is energy? What is this thing?
The ability for a body to do work.
The ability, you are saying me what it can do, right? See, there are two questions. It is what is it? That's one question. And what it can do? That's another question. So you gave me answer to this question. What's the answer to this one? Ability to do work. There is nothing wrong with it. That's absolutely correct. Ability to do work. Today I'll teach you a little bit, right, about varying things like black hole, this, that, if you want, correct? So ability to do work, that's fine. But what is it? Can somebody explain vividly what this thing means? What is it? I'll explain it to you using an example, right? Just stick to this thing, right? And I'll ask you another question. Just remember this, what I asked just now. Next question is, what is money?
A point system that everyone trades with.
But
smallest point.
isn't it different for different people?
Yeah, different
Currency,
point.
you can say currency or money or commodity whatsoever. But isn't it different for different people?
Yes.
Like you have dollars, you have euros, right? You have rupees, right? Isn't it different for different people? Yes or no?
Yes.
So if I'll ask you, what is it? What's the answer? And one more question, same question. What it can do? Can you explain what is it? What it can do is easy. What it can do, you can buy things. Simple.
It is a worthless point system which everyone believes in, therefore giving it value.
Therefore, it gives value. But the crux of the story is that if you have money, you can buy things, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the crux of the story. But what is it? It's a coin for you, right? For someone else, it could be a paper. In barter system, it could be a commodity, right? It can be anything of value. And why that thing has value, in exchange of that thing, you can get something, right? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what it basically means, what is it? There is no clear-cut definition. It varies from context to context. But what it can do is that you can buy things. Same goes with energy. If you'll ask what the exact definition of energy is, then there is no definition for energy. There is no definition for energy. But what we do know is that if we have this thing, we'll be able to do work. That's why you have so much categorizations in energy. You have heat energy, sound energy, this and that. Means any form of change which is capable of doing some work, you'll call it energy. So there is no exact definition of energy. For different people or for in different contexts, definition of energy is different. But if you have that thing, you'll be able to do work. That's the definition of energy. I'm confusing you, right? I'll tell you why this confusion is also important and why you should study physics.
Could you just repeat that definition?
I'll repeat. See, there is no definition for energy, that what it is. There is no clear-cut definition. In different contexts, definition of energy will be different, right? But one thing is sure, that if you have something which we call energy from any source, it can be heat, it can be sound, it can be anything, you'll be able to do work. Right?
So that's what I said. I said it's the ability to do work.
No,
That's
you were
what
right.
it
It's
means.
ability to do work, but it's not energy. What is energy and what it can do? They are two different questions, right? So there is no definition of what it is. But there is a definition of what it can do. Same as money. There is no definition of what money is. It can be different for different people. It can have different values, right? It can have different contexts for different people. In ancient days, it was different. Now it is different. It keeps on changing, right, with context. But what it can do remains constant. So similarly, energy has no clear-cut definition. But what it can do is certain, that if you have something which we call energy, you will be able to do. I hope you get the distinction between these two statements. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Next question which I would like to ask is, what is momentum? Or let's go by basics. What is a law? And what's a definition? I'll clear out a few things so that during classes, you'll have fewer questions. What is a law and what's the definition?
Law is a theory that's been proven to be true.
Law is something which is true. Okay, is that what you said?
Something which is for a rule which is followed.
Rule which is being followed. Rule, okay. So rule. Okay, what is definition? Like you must have studied. We define this particular thing. Yeah,
Meaning.
The meaning of a word.
Yeah, the meaning of the word.
Okay, you're
The
saying
exact
meaning.
meaning.
The
Okay, so you're saying,
explanation of something.
okay. See, in physics, I'll tell you what a law is. There is a phenomena. Let's say if you'll release a ball, it goes down. It's a natural phenomena, isn't it? It goes down. You can't help it. If you'll release a ball, it goes down. That's a natural phenomena which is happening. This is the way nature behaves, right? If you have a helium balloon, it moves up. That's a natural phenomena that happens. If you'll throw a ball in this direction, it goes like this. If you'll apply force to something, if you'll push it from rest, it starts moving. These are natural phenomena, right, which are happening. Understood this thing? there are something which we call natural phenomena, and or you can say how nature behaves. So how nature behaves. Laws are the description of how nature behaves. Or in other words, you can say, if nature behaves in a certain way, laws are the tools to explain how the processes are happening. For example, if the ball is going down, why is it going down? So laws make an attempt to explain why this particular process is happening. Using laws, what you try to do? You try to explain why nature is behaving in this particular way. Understood this thing? Why is it going down? Laws are trying to explain that. Now, in order to explain that, they tell a set of rules, right? That ball is going down because of reason one this, reason two this, reason three this, right? Right, this particular phenomena is happening. Why is it happening? You are trying to explain it using law, and law is giving you a set of rules, right? That first reason is this, second reason is this, third reason is this, and so on, right? Understood this thing? So laws are basically the statements or rules which are trying to explain how or why the nature behaves in a certain way, right? Understood this thing?
Yes, sir.
Got it or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
what is definition? See, if you want to quantify laws, what's the meaning of quantification? Quantification means you want to put whatever you know into numbers. Like, I know this particular process is happening, I can see it, but if I'll have to explain the same thing on paper, I'll have to have an analysis of it, right? For example, if I am applying force, the object is moving, fine, that's a law. How much that thing is moving, and if I'll vary my force, by what amount the motion parameters will vary, right? Now, in order to explain that thing, we assume a certain things. For example, if the object moves, let's say from location 1 to location 2, right? Then I know what the impact of this force was. It goes from here to here. That was the impact of the force. Then first thing I need to name it. What is it? What this change in position is. So I named it, let's say, length. What is happening? The position is changing and I named it length. Now I have to convey it to someone that if I'm applying this much amount of force, it goes from 1 to 2. If I apply more force, it goes from 1 to 3. So then comes the system of units, right? There comes the system of units, which you call 1 meter, feet, it depends, right? Meters, feet, and all those things, right? So in order to explain how much it has moved, I'll have to have a reference, right? How much I'm calling as 1 meter, how much I'm calling as 1 feet. This is not defined by nature. You are calling this length as 1 meter. Nature has nothing to do with it. You could have called this much as 1 meter. So this is something which is not happening in nature. This is something which is being defined by you in order to explain laws. Got it or not? So there are a few things
Yes.
which you take for your convenience in order to define laws in more mathematical way. Got it or not?
Sir.
So these are what you call definitions. So first you define parameters which you call definitions, and those parameters then you use to define something what you call law. And what's a law? Law is an explanation to why nature behaves in a certain way. Understood this thing?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now you may ask why we consider only ideal situations. So I'll just one by one take up questions, right, which you may have during the whole course, right? So why we only take ideal situations?
Ideal, as in, what does that mean?
Ideal in the sense when you consider motion, you don't consider air drag sometimes. You know,
Okay.
you don't consider a few things like a lot of processes are happening in your surrounding, right? You ignore everything and you just take one thing into account while analyzing that,
Or
right?
at times it's negligible. That's why.
Negligible, no.
At times, like when the object's really small.
Object is really, I'm saying in normal, why
Sorry.
at all there is a concept of ideal in general? Why there at all there is a concept of ideal?
To
To
simplify.
first understand and then actually put it the
To
Yeah,
simplify
correct.
the
Yeah, see, I'll
and get
tell you one thing.
approximate.
Yeah, correct. You all are correct to a certain extent. See, what happens, let's say you want to reach no more class, right? So it's located in Shakar Nagar. If you want to reach here, and let's say you start from Seshadripuram. So you started from Seshadripuram and you want to reach no more class. So if I'll straight away say no more class, it's quite possible that you may or may not know what the exact location is. So what I'll say, first go to Kodigi Gate, right? First go to Kodigi Gate, 200, 300 meters from there, in some direction, right, left, you will find no more class, correct? If you have a landmark, right? If you have a landmark, then slight deviation from the landmark can give you actual result. But if you don't have this landmark, then from Seshadripuram you can go this way, this way, this way. Infinite possibilities are there. So landmarks are important. Slight deviation from the landmarks will give you the actual results. For example, let's say an object moves in air, right? So there are two things. One is gravity, one is air drag. Correct? So if object is moving, I have analyzed gravity, then I'll add air drag to it. I'll get the complete solution. But if straight away you will say me that from object go to complete solution, then it will become complex. I'll have to deal with two things simultaneously. So ideal situations are important because slight deviations from ideal situation will give you practical results. And that's a rule in physics which you need to remember. The first rule basically, right? First reach an ideal condition and slight deviation from ideal condition will give you complete result. Understood this thing? Why we consider ideal situations?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
The last
Yes, sir.
sentence, it slightly dropped for me. Could you just repeat the last sentence?
Yeah, sure. What I'm saying is that once you have reached the ideal scenario, slight deviation from it will give you practical scenario. That's it. Nothing else.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Right? Okay, next thing is that you may ask that are the laws correct, incorrect? If they don't have proof, why we need to study them? Correct? So I'll tell you one thing. It's not like what your logic says is what you study. No. When you are studying physics, it's how nature behaves is what you study. Some things you are able to decode, some things you are not. Right? But few things will be there in the whole duration and maybe further also. That one is logic. So you have developed during the course of time some logic, right? That this thing should not happen, that thing should not happen. For example, if that's kept in your mind that if you have two charges, Q1 and Q2, they repel each other. If you have plus and minus, they attract each other. If you have plus and plus, repel, minus, minus, repel, right? So these things will be easier for you to understand because you can do that experiment also. Correct? But few things are counterintuitive. For example, if you place a wire and project a charge, it doesn't go this way or that way. It follows a circle, which is quite counterintuitive again, right? It doesn't make sense. So it defies our logic, right? Whatever logic we have studied or what we have developed defies that. So it's not logic which you study in physics. What you study in physics is how nature behaves. That's your topmost priority. If you are doing anything which is not possible as far as nature phenomena or natural phenomena are concerned, then it's irrelevant. It may satisfy your logic, but it's irrelevant. Because what you study in physics is how nature behaves. If nature behaves in a certain way and your intuition says something else, then probably your intuition is either wrong or incapable to explain how nature behaves. Correct? So few things you will have in this subject. In class 9th you may not have, but in class 10th you will surely have few topics where they'll be completely counterintuitive.
So example, quantum physics.
Example, quantum physics is one example. Apart from that, the simple example I told you, no, that if you have a current carrying wire, you project a charged particle, it follows a circular path. Right? We don't see these kind of things. We see either object is going up, down, parabolic path, this, that. That's what we believe. How can someone move in circle? So sometimes it will not satisfy your logic. So what's the reason for it? We haven't got the hidden laws. We don't actually know. We are not capable enough till now to explain it completely. Right? If we cannot explain it completely, why to study then? Because few topics you will have, even in quantum mechanics you will have, that I am telling you this equation, y is equal to fx. Just remember it. Why to remember it? Because it's experimentally correct. In a lot of situations, you'll have this statement. Right? Because this is how nature behaves. And since this equation fits into that phenomenon, we study this. It may or may not have a proof, because you must be knowing law. It may or may not have a proof. Right? May or may not have a proof. If it is not having a proof, few laws will have a proof and your IQ will be completely satisfied that, okay, I got it completely. But if a law is not proved, why to study that? Like law of gravitation, Newton's laws of motion, right? They are not proved. Why we study them? Anybody can give me an explanation why we study them? Same reason. Whether your logic can explain that law or cannot explain that law, doesn't matter. The way nature behaves, it will continue to behave in the same way, whether you can decode it or not. Now, this puts you into a dilemma that if we can't decode it, then one process is to start decoding it. That's one. That will take time, of course. Then why to study these scientists, Newton, this, that, right? You don't study, actually they are laws. I'll tell you why you need to study them. I'll give you one motivation, just one, that why you need to study them. Understand their brilliance. Right? You need to study those laws because of their intelligence. One thing, nature behaves in a way that motivation is there. But just understand one thing. At the time of Copernicus, have you studied this name? Copernicus? Kepler? Are Copernicus, yes or no? Have you heard this name? Have you heard this name?
Yes.
Yes.
What he did? See, I'll tell you the brilliance, right? Intelligence, just understand. There were no telescopes at that point of time, right? So that you can locate where the planet is, this, that, right? You can't measure anything. It's like,
He said that how the planets are around the sun.
Yeah, very good. So it gives a vivid picture of basically what you call solar system, right? So he told that sun is in the middle, and actually he gives circular one, but it's fine. So he gave a picture of basically solar system. Now understand the brilliance. There is no telescope. It's like you are going on the roof or outside your home. You're standing on a road. You are seeing the sky. Can you predict what the universe will look like? Just imagine yourself with your full intelligence. What intelligence you can apply, right? Just see the sky. Can you predict how will it look like from outside Earth? There are no telescopes. There are nothing.
No,
That's
sir.
yeah, correct. So see, if you have something, you can justify this thing that I am intelligent. If you'll give me with the utilities which I need, I'll be able to discover something. That's fine. You can. But see the intelligence of this guy. He wasn't having anything and he gave a picture which turned out to be correct. So that's why we study Copernicus. I'll tell you another example. Take Newton. Take Newton. Newton's laws. What's the formula? I'll tell you what the formula is, right? Even if you have not studied. But this is the formula he gave for gravity, right? He said that everything, the ball is going down, planets are revolving around Earth. So that means he explained from an apple to the universe, or not precisely universe, solar system. With just one equation. See how profound this equation is. Just one equation which is reduced, and that equation explains how apple falls towards the Earth and why planets move around the sun. There is no proof for it, but it exists, it works. Again, the same thing. The amount of brilliance, the amount of intelligence he has. He gave a simple equation. Equations can be simpler than this, but it's relatively simple, right? So a simple equation. Again, see the amount of thinking he has put in. A simple equation which can explain everything from an apple to the solar system. And people are worried about proof. No, you should be worried about proof. But the main thing is, see how beautiful this thing is. Just one equation which explains everything from a point mass to the solar system. Are you getting it or not?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So it's not like if a law is not having proof, it's a waste. No. See the brilliance behind it. Imagine yourself in it. Right? You worked on something and it's working so well. You don't have a reason out of it, but things are working this way. Satellites are moving around the planet. You are getting information. Everything is working out, right? And people don't want to study physics because there is no proof. Of course, there is some backlogs. You can work on it. But the main thing is see the intelligence, right? See the brilliance of this law. How beautiful the equations are. How beautifully they explain every phenomenon around you, right? Next thing is, okay, give me a topic. I'll teach you what that particular topic is. Dark matter.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Have you heard about what is dark matter?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think there is a need of dark matter?
Due to the amount of mass needed to hold galaxies together, due to the fact that they're spinning so fast.
There is a topic called gravitational lensing.
So, like they found some areas where, like, due to some gravity, like the light is being bent, and
Very
they couldn't
good.
find where the gravity is from, so they just named it dark matter.
Okay, great. Black hole.
A black hole is forms when a supermassive star collapses in a supernova, and when it's above the Chandrasekhar limit of I don't know how many solar masses.
No,
So
no,
yeah,
that's fine. But Chandrasekhar limit, the distance has to be that much.
what? Yeah, the mass
Chandrasekhar
has, it should be high.
mass. Okay, I got it. If the mass is lesser than that, what will be formed?
Then it'll be a neutron star or a white dwarf.
What are quasars?
quasars are like remains of ancient young galaxies.
Can they be black holes?
I believe not, due to the fact that no light can be emitted from black holes.
So how do you got to know that there are quasars? There is light.
So it is believed that a quasar is the remainder of a primordial galaxy which is being like finished off by a black hole, like the end.
Yeah, correct. There is an evidence for black hole. They consider it, right? That quasars can also be black hole. Okay. Anything else interesting? I don't think anything interesting is happening nowadays. Okay, why we consider pressure? Why not force? Sometimes you consider pressure, right? Sometimes force. Why is it so? What do you think? There are two terms which you'll hear, right? One is pressure, one is force. If you have any other question, right, related to subject, anybody can ask. Like general question, why this thing is like this and that thing is like that, which has explanation, which doesn't have explanation, you can ask. Anyone? No questions. Oh.
Pressure is force acting on area. I only remember the definition.
Which one?
I only know the definition.
Of what?
Pressure, nothing else. I have no clue.
Okay, it's fine. Okay. When force is distributed over an area, we call it pressure. We'll study that in fluid. What should I tell you now? Also, there is something what you call momentum. Have you heard this term ever? Okay, what was there in class 8? Tell me one chapter. I'll ask you a question from there. Any one chapter. Anyone, just name any one chapter. Anyone can do that. Just tell me any one chapter.
Sound.
Sound.
I'll see.
Okay. So let's discuss this. What is sound? What is sound? I'll see first you tell me what you know, then I'll tell you.
It's a form of energy.
It's a form of energy. Very good. What else?
It is a movement of a wave in a medium from one point medium to another without actual displacement of molecules.
Very good. So wave, it's a wave. And what kind of wave? Longitudinal. If you know, it's fine. It's a wave. Anything else? We hear because of this, right? Any other thing? If I remove air, will it work?
Yes, it needs a medium.
Yeah.
Travel through.
Will it work?
No, sir.
No, it will not. So it requires a medium. Anything else?
It does not include the actual displacement of molecules.
Okay, see, I'll tell you first I'll clarify this wave thing. Wave is actually transfer of energy. It's not the transfer of material. Transfer of material may happen, but wave is necessarily transfer of energy without a transfer of material. The moment I'm calling it a wave, and I'm not specifically mentioning that matter is moving, it basically means only energy is getting transferred with no material movement. Right? That is something which I want to tell. Anything else? What are the particles for air? Oh, sorry, so light. What do you call them? Light is made up of quantas, particles, photons. Similarly, sound. For sound, we have named particles. We call them phonons. Right? Like photons, there are something which you call phonons. This is just for information. This will not come in examination. What else? Anything else about sound? What's the hearing range?
20 hertz to 20 kilohertz.
For
Very good. 20
humans.
hertz to
Yeah, that's
20
for
kilohertz for
humans.
human. Yes. Anything else? Anything else about sound?
Could you give me the definition of phonus? Because yeah, I'm confused about it.
Which one? Phonons.
Phonons, yeah.
Or you can study by yourself. It's just a particle like photons. Like when light is coming, right?
But
You cannot actually catch a photon, correct? Or measure its mass or anything.
that's because it didn't have mass.
See,
Yeah.
every wave, I'll tell you what this thing is. Because it requires some study, right? And I'll clear it out. Once study this and I'll clear. The main thing is everything you can treat it either as a particle or as a wave, correct?
Yes, sir. And both.
This is what you call wave particle duality. So everything you can treat either as a wave or a particle. So similarly, light, if you'll consider it as a wave, you will call it electromagnetic wave. When you consider it as a particle, you call the particle as photons.
Okay, sir.
Similarly, in case of sound also, you can consider it as a wave or a particle. So when you are taking its particle counterpart, you'll call it phonons. Right? Just study a little bit on it. I'll explain it to you later, right?
Okay,
Then
sir.
I'll have to go through a whole wave particle duality. Okay, sound. Anything else about sound? Isn't it basically the propagation of pressure difference? Okay, now this is more than enough for sound, and now we'll try to see what actually sound is, right? So let's see what is sound. Actually, what happens is that in general, you have molecules, right? You have molecules evenly spaced, right? It's filled everywhere, but I'm showing them in form of layers. And their density, some density will be there. So it's air, right? There'll be some density, some pressure. And if you remember, this pressure is what you call atmospheric pressure, which is always there in the atmosphere. What is its approximate value? Atmospheric pressure, if you have heard it somewhere, pressure of atmosphere.
101325 pascals.
So 10 to the power 5 basically, right? And pascals is the unit, correct? Okay.
1 AMU.
Huh?
1
AMU?
AMU.
AMU. This thing what you are asking?
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir.
Better. Okay, first I'll tell you AMU, then I'll go back to that. AMU stands for atomic mass unit. Atomic mass unit. Why we need, see, this is the unit of mass, first thing, like kgs and all. Why do we need it? Because when you talk about particles at subatomic level, what happens in that is that if you ask me what's the mass of proton, it's 1.67 into 10 to the power minus 27 kgs. If you'll ask me mass of electron, it's 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. Correct? So if you'll see, it's very less as compared to 1 kg. Right? So we need a unit. We need a unit which can deal with these kind of masses, because kg you'll always have to deal with 10 to the power huge values, right? So then what we said, that we'll call mass of one proton, right? Mass of one proton I'll take as my reference, and I'll define all other masses with respect to mass of proton. And the mass of proton, which I've taken as reference, is what you call atomic mass unit. So 1.67 into 10 to the power minus 27 is actually 1 AMU. Like 1000 grams is what? 1 kg. Similarly, this is also a conversion unit. Why we have this kind of conversion unit? Because if you'll have this approximation, then if I'll ask you what's the mass of proton, you'll simply say 1 AMU. If I'll ask you what's the mass of electron, then it is 10 to the power minus 4, I think, right? Yeah. Are I got it or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So that's AMU, right?
Yes,
Achha.
sir.
Right, so we need AMU because generally we don't deal with heavy masses at subatomic level, right? So we need something smaller, some unit of mass which is smaller, right? Okay, see, sound. So in case of sound, what happens? 10 to the power 5 pascals is the ideal pressure which is there. When you speak, you apply some force to the layer next to your mouth. So you are speaking something, you applied some force to this layer. Now what will happen? This layer will move forward, or the particles of this layer will move forward. They'll come here close. Now here you have less number of particles. Everything else will remain same. They'll collide with these particles. And since now they have lost energy, they'll go back. So now the particles are here. These have now moved forward and everything else is same. Similarly, they'll collide with this one now. And after losing energy, they'll come back. So now the situation is this will remain at its location, this will remain at its location, this will move forward and this process, right? So what is happening? Whatever force you applied, what it is doing? It's decreasing density at certain locations and increasing density at certain other locations. Decreasing density at certain locations, increasing density at certain other locations. Decreasing density at certain locations and increasing density at certain other locations. Here more number of particles are there, so pressure will be greater than PATM because you have increased the density now, more force will be applied. Here pressure will be less than PATM. Now when this disturbance propagates, right, you again apply force on layer next to your mouth, right? And so same process will continue. Now this disturbance strikes something which you call as your eardrum, right? So it strikes your eardrum, and because of that, like these particles are vibrating because of collision, your eardrum also vibrates. And when your eardrum vibrates, your neurons get the information and then brain processes it and you hear the things. So what is sound? Sound is basically propagation of disturbance in the form of pressure variations, right? In the form of pressure variations. The points where density decreases, you call it rarefaction, and where it increases, you call it compression. You have heard this thing or not?
Yes, sir.
And one more thing, that in which direction sound is propagating or the disturbance is propagating? This. In which direction the particles are oscillating? This. Going forward, coming back. If direction of propagation of wave or disturbance is parallel to direction of oscillation of particle, there is a specific name for these kind of waves. What do you call them?
Longitudinal waves.
Longitudinal waves. Alright, so this is pretty much what you have studied in class 8th, I think. Class 9th, you will study some advanced stuff. Like velocity, what is the velocity of wave in string, what is the velocity of wave in air, and all those things. There was an experiment called Bell jar experiment.
Yes, sir.
What was it? What was this experiment, Bell jar experiment?
Sir,
The bell didn't make any sound when it was in vacuum, but then when it was in air, it made a lot of noise.
yeah.
Okay. So that means air requires medium, right? So sorry, sound requires medium.
Sound requires medium for propagation.
On the other hand, light does not. So if a wave requires medium, there is a name for it. Anyone of you know what the name is? Sound requires medium. If something requires medium, there is a name for it. We call it mechanical waves. What do we call it? Mechanical waves. If it requires medium. If it doesn't require medium, what do we call it? It's simple. You can answer. What will be the
waves.
No, non-mechanical. Something
So
requires
it's time up.
Oh, class was up to what time?
6:30.
Oh, is it? Oh. Okay then. Take care. Revise that motion concept, right? And most probably from the next class it will start formally, right? Okay
Thank you,
then.
sir.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.